Miles, what's happening, dude?
Una Ziwa, Brian. Hello from Bucharest in Romania.
Is that how this show's gonna go? Is this just gonna be a Miles
Yeah,
vacation special? What did
it
I
is.
learn on vacation today?
Um,
Apparently something
that
about kebabs, and that pizza is fucking impossible to order.
yes, I did struggle to order pizza. I'm going to need assistance with that tomorrow. But the really cheap food, everyone in Romania I've met, just like on the street or at the airport, super lovely. Like I have a few friends from Romania. They're just wonderful people. So yeah, much love to Romania.
Much love to Romania. All right, man. Well, on that note, I think it's probably time to start the weekend with today's
Let's
show.
do it.
Let's go. This is PSVR GamesCast Live, where we film live every single Monday, Wednesday, and Two Wise Friday right here on PSVR without Parole. Joining me this week, all the way from Romania, look like a very comfortable couch that you're sitting on, is my friend, Two Wise, Miles Dyer.
Yep. How are we doing, Brian?
Doing pretty good, man. The question is, how are you doing? What time is it over there?
It is, well, I'm on my work laptop, it says 11 p.m., but it's actually 1 in the morning here. So normally it's a late one on Fridays for me, and that's fine because it's Friday and I love being with you guys. But now I'm 2 hours later. Yeah, it's 1 a.m. So I'm feeling good though. It's been a long day, a lot of traveling. But this place I'm in is wonderful, and I'm really excited for the next 5 days to explore a city and a country I've not been to before. So if anyone else out there has been to Romania before, let us know in the chat. Any recommendations? And yeah, I'm just glad I could still make this work.
Yeah, man, it's pretty awesome. I'm like actually really surprised. The first thing when you told me that you were doing this, my first thought was, well, let's cancel the show. Like that's the easy thing to do. It's going to be even later than usual. I always feel bad how late it is, and then here we are. You're just like, no, let's still do it. I'm like, all right, that's fine by me. Good. So thank you for
No, for
that.
sure, man. But it is because in 2 weeks I am not going to be here because it's my band. This is sad news now. My band, it's our final ever show, is happening not next Friday, the Friday afterwards. So yeah, Schemata Theory is closing after 10 years, and just to let everyone know, it's all with like high spirits. We just every time we come across a new venture, whether it's a new tour or a new album, we're really close friends, so we have discussions of are we going to do this? It's a big financial and time commitment. And after 10 years, life changes. Some of the band, have families or, new ventures in their life or job situations, changes. And so we decided to end on a high. So yeah, we're going to be playing a show that night, and we actually finish as soon as this show starts. So maybe if I take the computer with me, I'll just walk off stage. Hey, Game Cats, let's do this. But that's really realistically not going to happen. But yeah, that is what's happening in a couple of weeks.
Miles, this isn't on our run of show, and obviously, what's going to. I told you before the show, I was like, it's late here. I mean, it's late there, and I'm not feeling 100% today. I was like, so let's keep this as. But every time you and I start talking, it's just like, well, let's fucking forget about the show. Like, let's just hang out and and shoot the shit and have a
Yeah,
good time.
the
But
Brian Star Tenders. I'm joking.
but I'm genuinely curious about what's next for you after Schemata Theory musically, because I mean, musicians don't their bands don't break up, and or singers, their bands don't break up and then they go, well, I guess that's it for me musically. I'm never going to do this again. It's such an integral part of who you are and what you do, and something that you're passionate about. I can't imagine that you're like, well, that's it. Well, are you planning on something musically after this is all said and done?
The honest truth is, emotionally, I want there to be a continuation, as you say. Like music is, if it's within you, it's within you, whether it's listening to music or performing it or just writing it. But to be honest, I am probably going to just allow there to be like maybe a 3-4 month like emotional reset where I just don't think about next projects. But I have a huge love for electronic dance music, and I know that might make some game cats laugh knowing that I scream in a metal band. But there's a lot of hybrid mixtures. I mean, if you've played Synth Riders or even Beat Saber with what's the Monster Cat track? Riot is the artist. What is the song that everyone loves to play by Riot? It's quite tricky. The chat will know.
This is an Overkill. What's the
Overkill?
Is that it?
Overkill.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah, so that has like scream and stuff in it. So I have a few people that are electronic dance music artists, and I'm going to network with them and just say, hey, if there are collaboration efforts, maybe that's something. But the honest truth is, I don't know. But for me, the band is just one aspect of other creative outlets in my life, and being a part of this community and working with you, the truth is, it's going to free up a lot of time for me to support this channel more. Because with the band, running all the socials, it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot there, so not managing that stuff is going to free up a lot of time in that sense. So it's kind of like you just move on in other things. But music will always be there. How it will continue, I don't know, but I don't feel pressured by it. What I will say though is, having put up a promo this past week, and we had a band rehearsal, we've got one left, and then the last show. It's starting to emotionally set in that this is it, and it's going to be weird being on stage and every song we play just being like, that's the last time we're ever going to play that. Because for those that aren't in bands, the reason I think, especially for our band, it's quite a tough thing to go through is, being in a band and creating music with other people is a very personal experience. It's showing vulnerability. You're working together to craft music, to communicate something. You go on tour together. You spend hours in the studio and practicing and rehearsing. It's a very personal experience. And so in a way, it is like a relationship breakup in some ways when it comes to an end. Obviously, we're going to remain close friends. But even us, we were having discussions about, I hope we still hang out, because the way we normally hang out was through the band. It's like, well, yeah, we just need to make efforts in other ways. So it's been quite interesting.
Well, I mean, whatever you do next, man, obviously you said you're gonna take some time and figure shit out and relax, but I'm sure it won't be long until you've got something new to tell us about. So I'm looking forward to whatever that is, and I'm glad. I'm actually kind of glad that you're potentially venturing into other territories. I think musicians who find themselves stuck in one place, never feel quite as satisfied as they'd want to be. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and obviously I wasn't around when Bob Dylan was first performing, but as a college kid, looking back on his career and kind of working my way through it, and seeing that he went from the folk thing to to rock and roll and pissed off all of his fans, and then he did this Christian thing for a while, and he just tried all this stuff. I find that to be really, really satisfying, and I'm actually really jealous of you, to be honest, because I'm a musician, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I can't play or sing the types of music that I truly love. So even if I write a song like that, it always still comes out sounding like a fucking Bright Eyes song, because that's the only range I have, or that's the only talent that I have. So I'm a little bit jealous that you've got these kind of other capabilities going on.
It's interesting you say that, Brian, but I guess it's always about perspective, because for me, I can't sing. People say I can. I think because I'm in my 30s now, it's an even harder barrier to overcome, because a part of singing is having the confidence just to give it a go. And so when you're a kid, you just go for it. So I'm jealous of people that can sing. And I remember during one of your Ask Me Anything live streams, by the way, everyone watching, sign up to Patreon. You get access to that when Brian does those live shows from time to time. Oh, yeah. And you got out your guitar and you sang, and it sounded awesome, man. So it is just finding out, what you can do. But yes, in music, there's a lot of things we look to and go, especially as a vocalist, I wish I sounded like them. But the thing is, we all have our own voice, and you have to learn to use that, which can be tough. But
well, Miles, now that we're totally off schedule, we'll
catch up.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Well, we got to remind people right now, though, that that this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern is the multiplayer meetup. Remember to join our Discord, because that is the easiest way to get involved in these multiplayer meetups. There's probably a lot of games sitting in your backlog that either you haven't played or you've never played the multiplayer of. This Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, organized by our good friend in GameCat, Professor Lilith, Battlewake. This is really an underappreciated mode. It's not terribly deep, and so you probably get all of what you need from Battlewake's multiplayer on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So I say get in there and give it a shot if you never have before. If you didn't play multiplayer during the first week or two of launch, you probably didn't have anyone to play with. And so we get all these cats in there. Let's have some fun.
I'm very jealous of anyone who gets to play on Sunday because unfortunately I don't have my VR equipment with me. There's a few things I wanted to do on this break, but yeah, it's a game that I've always wanted to experience in the multiplayer. So I can't stress it enough. If you're about on a Sunday, get involved because it's an awesome community. And as I mentioned last week, even if it's a game that you're not that familiar with and you're worried about, not being great at it, there's no ego in that community. It's everyone's just up for helping each other, and it's always a really good time.
Right. And when you get over there, give Professor Lilith a shout out and let her know how much you appreciate all this stuff that is being organized. Because a lot of moving parts with it without Parole, and if I had to do it all, nothing would ever get done, Miles. So I'm very, very proud of all the cats out there who helped this thing run. Let's not forget Sci-Fi Game Cat Henry, who puts the timestamps in this after the show. All the moderators who, kid you not, like my life is so much easier because of them, and they just, I think they take the role of moderation far more seriously than I would ever take it myself. So I appreciate them. And then, of course, Jay Meow, who gets this very show that you're watching right now up on podcast services of your choice. But a great reason to go over to Discord, Miles, is to leave viewer takeover questions. Obviously, you can leave whatever questions you want here in the chat. I do my absolute best to bring you guys into the show whenever possible, whenever you have a great question. But sometimes there's just not enough time to talk to everybody and answer everybody's question. So the best way to get your questions asked and answered on the show is to leave them in the viewer takeover channel on our Discord. Click the link in the description below. While you're there, subscribe to Miles' channel. Does great stuff over there, although probably not for the next week.
I actually get back on Wednesday, and if I get back from the airport in the 2-hour drive, I'll have an hour to set up for the show. So if you want to go and see me have a meltdown, come on Wednesday.
That's great, man. I will definitely tune in. Just you're just gonna be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm so caffeinated.
I'll be speaking Romanian. I'll be speaking fluent Romanian.
I love it. All right, man. The first viewer takeover question comes to us from Orsik, the beheaded game cat. Says, #viewer takeover. Isn't it for the best that we might never have Iron Man VR on PSVR 2 and instead get a brand new Iron Man game designed for PSVR 2 and hybrid, so it gets a AAA budget? Miles, one of the more disappointing things that we heard on the MetaConnect event, whenever that was, God, I have zero perception of time. Was that?
It was this week.
Was it this week?
Tuesday, wasn't it?
Okay. Was that Metabot camouflage? And so that we that studio is now just gone from our ecosystem. We got Republic, we got Iron Man VR, and now on the heels of this announcement, it seems like the Quest is getting a pretty damn good version of Iron Man VR. Do you think this means that we won't get a PSVR 2 version of Iron Man VR?
Well, just to talk about that news in particular, I was really shocked when I saw that pop up. And I think, interestingly, it's one of those pieces of news where most, Meta Quest players they'd think it's just great news. But as someone who, as a PlayStation community or PSVR community, it's actually kind of in a weird way. Some people might disagree, you might disagree, but it's as if it's a bigger loss for us than it is a gain for them. Because they're getting a game that has already been released elsewhere, and they acknowledged that on the announcement. But also they mentioned, this is a partnership with Sony Interactive Entertainment, and so it means that there is opportunities for a sequel to be made. I don't think it's particularly likely because Sony has other companies they're able to work with, and there are also other games, another Iron Man game being made by Motive Studios, who are obviously doing the current Dead Space remake. They did Squadrons, as we've mentioned before. So that could be an interesting dynamic as well. But I was really, really surprised by the news. And Camouflage was a company, because of that game, I thought I could see them actually being acquired by Sony. What did you think?
Yeah, I actually thought that they very likely could have been acquired by Sony, but I also think that they were a team that sort of was struggling to find their way for a very long time. If you watched the behind the scenes documentary that came with the the Republic VR limited run collector's edition, you see just how much they struggled just getting the iPad and iOS versions of Republic out initially. Like it seemed like their company wasn't even going to survive that development period. They struggled and struggled and struggled to make it happen. And then here we are with Iron Man, and it seems very much like they struggled and struggled and struggled to make it happen, because I mean it wasn't. I don't think any studio out there would have looked at this game and been like, yeah, this was our vision, right? They did a lot of things great in that game. I think, as soon as you get into the Iron Man suit, you take off, it feels good, everything's good. But then there's a lot of other things that are just like, well, what happened here? Why are the loading screens like a minute long? This is totally pulling us out of the immersion. Why can't I walk around Stark Manor? Why is this? A lot of little things that sort of added up to be like, this is a great experience, but man, I can't think about it with nothing but positivity. I always revert to being like, yeah, it was really fun while it lasted, but man, it had a lot of issues too. And so as a studio, I honestly don't know what Meta just bought. I don't know if this is a studio that struggled to find their way and is now there and is capable of making the AAA games that Ryan Payton said that this was a studio they want to be the next big AAA studio. I don't know if they bought that studio or if they're buying a studio that's still struggling and still finding their way. And so really, I won't know what I think of this news until I see Camouflage's next game on Quest.
I'm with you completely on that. And it was only actually on last week's show that we did together that we were talking about, I think it was another viewer takeover question about what games would we be most excited to see get a sequel for PSVR 2. Or a game to get a PSVR 2 version. And Iron Man was that one that I shouted at randomly because I was like, oh yeah, that. There's so many things they could fix with it. And so, I think that made it hit a bit harder when the news came out. I was like, oh, okay, should probably stop dreaming about that. Don't dream big or Meta will come along and crush it.
But I don't think this means anything, though. I mean,
That's true.
Sony got the license to Iron Man. Sony chose. I mean, I'm assuming chose Camouflage. I know it went a little bit differently. Ryan Payton from Camouflage sort of explained how it worked in the different pitches that they used for the game to be chosen as a studio who ended up developing Iron Man VR. But Sony's the one with the license, and I can't imagine that this partnership excludes Camouflage from bringing a better version of Iron Man out to PSVR 2. I think any game that Sony had a part in developing or financing or funding on PSVR 1 is almost a guarantee, regardless of anything that's else happening in the land of business. I think that all the games that they've had any part in developing or funding will find their way on the PSVR 2 and relatively soon.
And Meta seems to be doing some interesting collaborations with arguably, competitors. I mean, look at what happened with End Dreams and Ghostbusters. It was the first where it's going to be seen on VR is on Meta, right?
Right.
The Quest, and it does say, part of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and also Meta were announcing partnerships they're doing with Xbox. I saw the screen of all the flat screen games you can now play in VR. So technically, Fortnite VR is coming out. It's the flat screen version. But I kind of like that approach. And as was mentioned in the chat, when they announced this Camouflage thing, they did kind of give credit to Sony. I like the fact that it doesn't always have to be combative. It can be collaborative, even with different devices. And I think especially, it's kind of what we see with all the indie devs when it comes to VR games. There's the rivalry. Obviously, they want to make the best, VR game. Yeah. But there's a lot of companionship and solidarity because everyone's trying to work their way through this. Now, of course, when it comes to crunch with, the amount of money that's been pumped into Meta and, creating the metaverse, and when Sony's investing all this money into Epic Games, there is going to be some moments that are going to get quite... there's going to be a lot of friction and a lot of aggression, but I think when it comes to these kind of things, I'm quite hopeful that it's not quite as cutthroat as it is when there are acquisitions made for flat screen games. I don't think that Meta is going to be taking anything away from us, and I'm glad that they're getting funding from some company to hopefully build more and better VR titles.
Agreed. Real quick, Scott Jesko, PSN, Harry Feld, PSVR Game Cat for Life, with the £2 in the chat says, tip train, choo choo, or should it be ghost train, boo boo, hashtag Team Dave.
No.
Thank you very much, Scott Jesko. I do think there's a lot of love. I will say there's a lot of love for Iron Man in the chat, and I'm really happy to see that because, for all the people out there like me who who enjoyed the experience but still struggle with all the downsides. Yeah. There's people out there who are just like, it was one of my favorite fucking VR games ever, and I'm like, that makes me so happy to see because not everybody judges games in the same way. What I will say about that is, despite the fact that I'm happy you guys are loving Iron Man VR or have loved it, I think it's going to be a night and day difference when we see on PSVR 2 if, as you mentioned, the new Iron Man game is being made by EA Motive, who made Squadrons, so they have experience with this hybrid model. If we get this on PSVR 2 as a hybrid title, I think it's going to be a night and day difference when we see just what a hybrid, like a real hybrid game, is capable of delivering on PSVR 2. And like, what does that mean? How much more gameplay are we going to get every time you're not in the suit? What are we doing? Like, the progression system is just a lot more. I can only imagine there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more depth to it, and the VRAF mechanics are going to be above and beyond. So that's what I'm going to be most interested in seeing is like because it's a non-VR game at its core. That means it's being developed for way more people. There's bigger budget, and the team has a lot more. They've got a better ability to include all of these things because they're not limited as much by funding or time, and they've got a bigger team to take care of all of this.
Yeah, and the final point I'd say on this, Brian, is it kind of reminds me of discussions we had regarding Beat Saber when it got bought by Meta. Does that mean that it might get taken away from PSVR 2? And we all think nah. And one of the arguments I made for that was it's actually good research and development for Meta to have one of their titles built for the PlayStation VR offering, because by doing that, they're actually going to learn about that hardware, what it is to develop, and that can also inform the development with their own gear. So I think there's a lot of to be said also with anything that Camouflage does with Iron Man. If there's a new version done or stuff like that, they'd want it to come onto PlayStation's platform, because Meta want to not just rely on their own research and development and trials and errors. They want to actually learn about what it's like developing for PSVR 2 as well, which is going to have features that the Meta Quest Pro doesn't have, and vice versa.
Agreed. In a roundabout way, somehow, Miles, this brings us to our next viewer takeover question. I don't have to come up with a segue. We'll leave that to your imagination.
I love it when segues are intentionally deployed.
Stike on Discord in the viewer takeover channel asks, are we ready to pay AAA prices for AAA VR games? What if Horizon Call of the Mountain is $70? First of all, I don't think Horizon Call of the Mountain is going to be $70. I think that price point is reserved for true AAA games that potentially hybrid games. I think most of the AAA games we're going to see are going to be hybrid because that's the most reasonable way to make a AAA game that's PSVR 2 compatible. But so I see Horizon as like a $50 game. And based on what we've heard, right, the team has said it's roughly 8 hours or so. You can take your time, explore longer if you want to, but we also, things are. It's sounding. I don't want. This is going to be really negative when I say this, but I can't think of a better term. Like when combat seems a little bit dumbed down, and they just sort of made it like this VR first experience, meaning it's no longer open world, and they've removed some of the core Horizon elements. I still think it's gonna be an amazing game. It's I can't imagine us being disappointed in it, but still, I don't find it. From what we've heard so far, I don't think this is going to be an example of a $70 AAA game. What about you?
Yeah, agreed. If this is going to be a launch title that they want people to experience PSVR 2 on to begin with, they just want to get it in as many people's hands as possible. And the only way they could do it better than $40 is if it was a game like Astrobot that, comes with the PS5. But there could be an Astrobot Rescue Mission 2, who knows, with the PSVR 2. So, yeah, I can't see it being a full-fledged $70 game. And as you were saying, Brian, the case for AAA prices for AAA VR games if they're hybrid games, there's not really much of a discussion to be had. It just makes sense. It's just a bigger pool of people. And if people have bought like a PS4 version and they're like, we've just released a PS5, PSVR 2 version, I think that's a way that they're going to be able to funnel more money, even if it's just an upgrade price or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the $70 price point is concerned, I do think that, I mean, I'm ready, man. This is what we've been asking for. We've been, as gamers, we've been asking for, where are the AAA games? Why don't we get Resident Evil 7 right off the bat with PSVR 1? Why didn't we get more games like that? Why weren't we able to get more, current gen big titles? What was happening there? We learned a little bit later as to, some of the reasons as to why that was happening. But we've been ready, I think. We've been ready since the dawn of PSVR 1 to pay for premium games. And if as long as we are getting the premium experience, I think that we're all going to be really happy paying $70 for those games. I mean, no one's really happy paying $70 for games, period. But it's the state. It's where we are right now, right? I'd be much happier, Miles, paying $70 for a game that I'm able to play in VR than a $70 game that I can only play on my television, on my flat screen.
Well, you're in luck, Brian, because Naughty Dog are releasing The Last of Us Part 1 VR, and it's only $70 on top of the previous $70 if you bought the flat screen version.
Miles, Naughty Dog will get my fucking money, man. They will get my money if they make Last of Us Part 1 compatible with PSVR 2. If I can play Last of Us again, not flat screen, in VR, first person, dude, they will get my $70. But I've already played Last of Us twice. I've played twice, right? PS3 and then again on PS4. I will buy the game again if I can play it in first person VR. Do you think? Yeah, I think that would be the perfect example of a hybrid game, because not only are you not doing crazy activities, right? Everything is a little bit on the slower pace stuff. There's a little bit of running and jumping, whatever, shooting, the whole thing.
Grabbing ladders,
grabbing ladders, pushing Ellie around on a Titanic door. There's not like, oh my god, we're doing crazy shit here. We're not Spider-Man. We're not shooting web slingers.
Nathan Drake.
Yeah. I mean, and Nathan Drake's another example. I mean, Uncharted is, again, like, yeah, you're climbing and you're jumping from rock to rock, but I mean, there's nothing there that couldn't be done in VR, especially things that we haven't already seen. So I do think Last of Us is a perfect example of something that Sony should be looking at. And really, with the rabid fan base that The Last of Us has, this would be a perfect way to get people into PlayStation VR 2. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, science, GameCat, meow, with the $20 tip says, not $20, with the $2 tip. I'm sorry, Josh, I can't read today. It says, I hope we get many, many $70 PSVR 2 games. Agreed. This is what we've been wanting. Where are they? Like, it's nothing wrong with smaller $10, $15, $20 games. Nothing wrong with that. Those are great to play between the big $70 games. We just didn't have enough $70 games or $60 games or even $50 games on PSVR 1. And I use those prices to reflect quality and depth and in the longevity of these games. Obviously, I don't want a 3-hour game that they're charging us $70 for. I think you guys are all smart enough to know what we're talking about here. TCMF Games Official. I'm going to anyway because why not? Canadian 279 says, still think a VR 2 event is coming this year? ?
I think a showcase is still happening this year.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why people think maybe it's not. Like, what changed in the last couple of weeks? Is it because we didn't get something in? We didn't get something on the anniversary? Is it because?
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget September. Just a couple weeks ago, there was that big press event where a bunch of outlets got their hands on PSVR 2 headsets and had a ton of coverage. This is the beginning of Sony ramping up their hype for PSVR 2, their marketing, their advertisement. That's just the beginning. When does?
Yeah. Oh yeah, God of War Ragnarok comes out November 9th. So because I feel like once they get God of War out the way, because this has been the thing that's been overshadowing every showcase, because it was 2 showcases ago it was revealed and it was like, oh, is it coming out, so that I was just checking now, and the fact it's the 9th of November, I thought if it was towards the end of November it might be a difficult thing
Yep.
to do in December. But if it's out on the 9th of November, yeah, they could do a showcase mid-November.
I mean, yeah. The fact is most of us think that sounds really late, right? But because we've been waiting years for PSVR 2, like, why are you waiting so long?
Yeah.
But really, when it comes down to it, the rest of the world is like, oh, this thing comes out in 3 months. Perfect. Yeah, let's do pre-orders now. And so like mid-November would absolutely be perfect for a PSVR 2 event. I wouldn't be thrilled about it because I'm like, come on, guys, this is fucking taking forever. But let's, as long as it happens eventually and pre-orders open and price is something we can deal with, then great. Yeah. Comma science, comma gamecat, comma meow, with the $5 tip says commas denote pauses, or maybe when you read out loud, you say comma after every comma. Hashtag grammar.
And we've got Piotrek F with the 11.99 PLN, whatever that is.
Plantains.
What's PLN? Oh, plantains. Yeah, Scotty is right. We only want indie VR games.
All right, yeah, Piotrek F. We're gonna get to that statement in just a minute, but probably a good time to move on to the second to last news story, which is that if you want to celebrate Halloween, well, very shortly you're going to be able to do that.
I mean, who wants to celebrate Halloween, Brian?
I don't know.
No, I don't know anyone either.
I don't know. I already forgot what this is called.
Halloween? Is it Halloween?
Did I not download this? Oh, here it is. There it is. There. Bing. So Media Molecule announced that they are bringing All Hallows, the Land of Lost Dreams, keeping up with their fucking terrible naming conventions for these things. All Hallows, yes, Josh, I'm reading the fucking colon. The Land of Lost Dreams, which is just like, dude, how about we get rid of the All Hallows? Just how about we just say Dreams, the Land of Lost Dreams, or how fucking, I don't know, man. But they say, where do all the forgotten dreams and half-finished ideas go? Get lost and discover this creative purgatory dimension with its rich and unnerving history, filled with strange quests, odd but familiar characters, and even community-created interactive delights. Escape #The Land of Lost Dreams this Halloween. Play in Dreams from October 20th, 2022. Did you play last year's Ghost Train thing?
I didn't.
No.
I mean, this is a game that I should be diving into way more than I am. And it's because, kind of like No Man's Sky, it's a game that I've just kind of said, I'm going to jump into it when there's a PSVR 2 version. And I know that's not everyone will agree with that, but that's just how I feel about them.
Are you saying that about Dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah, oof, then you may be in for a wait, because according to Media Molecule, not on the roadmap currently.
Is that right? Yeah.
A little bit disconcerting. I don't know what that means though. Does that mean that they have to move on to something else? Are they going to eventually? Are they going to have to be like, well, listen, Dreams didn't really work out, and there wasn't as much engagement as we anticipated. So we'd love to support this thing till the end of our days, but we just can't financially. We need to move on and make something else. We need to make Little Big Planet 5 or something.
PlayStation Home.
Tearaway 2.
PlayStation Home.
I'm down, man. If PlayStation Home looks all cotton candy like, then I'm all right. As long as we get it. Give me cotton.
But no,
candy.
I do need to dive into these because I hear such great things. But also, I'm always quite sirens on my end. There's actually I don't know if you can hear them.
Yes.
I feel solidarity now.
Wow. It's finally not me.
I know. But yeah, no. I just wish Dreams had multiplayer to like experience worlds together in VR. That'd be amazing. But everything I see AJ always talking about blows my mind, so I do need to jump back in there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Always impressed by what people make over there. In the Ghost Train stuff from last year was actually really incredible. It was really just some cool stuff, and the community made stuff is always good. And they stitched it all together and they made these big haunted houses. This is happening on the 20th. I'll probably be streaming it, and we'll be able to check this out together. I feel like every year they get a little bit more family friendly. So they don't go for like the huge scares. They kind of go for something that's like weird and just like Halloween themed, but not really super scary or anything, which is fine. I don't need Dreams to be the source of all of my horror goodness. It's fine. Before we get into our main topic, Old Darth with Canadian $5 tip says PC VR mods have shown almost every game works well in VR. Are they all VRAF? No, but they are all still highly enjoyable. Yeah, man, that's been the thing that really, if Sony's been paying attention at all, if Capcom's been paying attention at all, like how could you be one of those studios? How could you be Sony, like in charge of PlayStation VR 2? How could you be Capcom watching your game get modded on PC to do these things in first-person VR? Resident Evil 2 and 3 just look awesome and look like they play great. Like, how could you be those studios and not go, well, we need to make an official version of this and show those modders what VRAF really means. Not that they're using without parole terminology, but you get my drift, and gist. You get my.
I get your
drift. Let's go with drift.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the drift. The gist. You get the gist. Yeah.
And I totally just missed the other tip that went by. Where is it?
Oh, the other tip was I've got it here.
Thank you.
It was by GB, the Rally Haptic Ghost Cat. It means is working on a PS5 upgrade, otherwise PSVR 2 wouldn't merit looking into.
Oh, so it could just be like a whole wording thing. Yeah,
this is the thing I always thought about, like PSVR 2 versions. Like if we take Beat Saber, for example, there's a question of like if they make a PSVR 2 version, will it come with the DLCs? I assume what's going to happen is, just like has happened from PS4 to PS5, No Man's Sky got a PS5 version, but if you want to play VR, you have to play the PS4 version of it. So I assume what's going to happen is the PS5 version of No Man's Sky is just going to have a VR version, which is for PSVR 2.
Yeah.
So I assume that's what Beat Saber, I reckon, will just say we can now get the PS5 version, which would be compatible with PSVR 2. I assume that's how it's all going to work.
Agreed. It's so simple. I mean,
I know, but for weeks
and
months we've been agonising over it. Like, how are they going to do it? And I'm like, it really could be that simple.
Right. Yeah.
It should be that simple.
Yeah, there were a lot of conversations early on in the PSVR. Oh, I'm sorry, the PlayStation 5 life cycle. I mean, I know we're still early on, but there are a lot of people saying, how come we can't get PlayStation 5 titles for PlayStation VR 1, right? How come? And I think we're seeing that now. It's like, this is because it would just add so much confusion, right? PlayStation 5 is for PSVR 2. PlayStation 4 games for PSVR 1. Can you imagine if there was like these cross-gen games? Some of these PlayStation 5 games were designed for PSVR 1, but not all of them were. And then we get PSVR 2. It's like, well, how come we can't play these with our PSVR 1? I'm just like, into what? Satisfy a few thousand gamers rather than the millions and millions that will buy PSVR 2. I trust me, I can understand how this sounds anti-consumerism or anti-consumer. But man, the nightmare that it would bring from a PR standpoint, I can't even begin to imagine people having to deal with that shit. It'd be nuts. Shades of Grey Matter with Canadian $5 tip says this week's Backlog Club. Shades, you know what, man? Let me take a second here. There's so much shit happening on the Without Parole Discord that I can't even like keep up with it. I forget that there's a Backlog Club.
Amazing.
So thank you so much for pointing out stuff that I am terrible at promoting. So go to Discord and join the Backlog Club. If you've got a backlog of games, Shades of Grey Matter says this week's Backlog Club game is Paranormal Activity. Join us in Discord to work through your backlog before PSVR 2 gets here. Wonderful idea. They've been doing the Backlog Club for a while, but no one talks about it. So get in there if you haven't played Paranormal Activity. Dude, one of my favorite horror games on PSVR. Have you played it yet? You should be ashamed, Miles. You should be ashamed.
I am. I'm ashamed, but I've also got clean underwear, so,
Shit. That just makes me realize if I don't wear underwear, that means I'm just like really damaging pairs of jeans and sweatshorts and stuff that... All right, hold on. I'm taking notes. Buy underwear.
I do think...
Boxers or briefs? What are we doing?
Man, PSVR 2 needs to come with like PlayStation branded adult diapers for like Resident Evil Village or whatever horror games they do.
All right, since you didn't give me an answer, we're going boxer briefs. All right, man.
It's on my backlog, but it's like a lot of horror games. I have to be in the right frame of mind. The sort of I'm ready to have a heart attack frame of mind.
This is what you should be. I know you're on vacation right now, but when you get home, especially the few days leading up to the 31st. I think you need to get a little bit more American on us, right? Because I know that like Halloween isn't like this big thing in the UK like it is here.
You do it so good. It's actually getting quite American over here. It happens a lot more than when I was first growing up.
You're welcome.
But yeah, I know. Cheers.
Yeah, it's really the only thing I look forward to all year.
It's amazing. I love dressing up and all that. So it's nice to dress up for a reason.
Nice. Well, I think that probably takes us to the big topic of the week. And Miles, this topic is so strange because in my head there was only one answer. It's what VR is still a new medium. Developers are still finding their way, trying to find the best solutions for locomotion, trying to find their best solutions for motion sickness. Headset manufacturers are doing the same thing. It's a brave new world, and we're all sort of just finding our way through it. As gamers, we're figuring out what we like and what we don't like. And turn buttons, man, turn buttons. Like, can you imagine a world like if you said 7 years ago, before PlayStation VR came out, be like, oh hey, we're moving into VR, but you're gonna have to turn with buttons. Be like, what's wrong? What happened to analog sticks in the future, Brian? We just don't have them. Like, wait,
click turning.
What? Wait, or click turning. Oh yeah, no longer can you just smoothly turn. So VR brought.
We hate that.
VR brought with it like a whole. Yeah, I mean, like, a whole new set of things that no one expected.
Yeah,
it's like the Spanish Inquisition, Miles. This is. I blame voice chat for this. We were in voice chat, and I said no one expected, and everybody was like, Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, everyone likes to turn smooth, but what if you could turn in a segmented way?
What if you could turn in a completely unnatural way that no one on the face of the planet has ever done, ever?
But people, twitchy robots.
But the funny thing is, Miles, is like we're making fun of it, but I mean, obviously, for people who with motion sickness, we understand like it really does help a lot of people. LA Noire, it made me a little bit queasy because of just the acceleration they used. But then on top of that, there are people who defend it, and so this is because they're like, well, this is how your eyes work when you look this way, that way. It's not this smooth motion. It's boink 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 boink, right? And so. So this just shows you that there are a lot of different gamers out there, and a lot of people prefer different things. And team options is what we've always tried to promote over here on Without Parole. So here we are, and we're getting to really we're getting out of the experimental phase of virtual reality. Like PSVR 1 was a huge experiment. We used old motion controllers from the generation prior. We used light tracking and a whole fucking shitload of wires. In a lot of games. Didn't use motion controllers. Some games that used motion controllers had weird control schemes. We're getting out of the experimental phase, and we're getting into something that could be considered as close to mainstream as VR has ever seen. And with that, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And the question is, what do gamers really want? This whole question started, and I'm going to bring up this here, with a tweet from Scott Steff. Who said, this is brought to my attention on Twitter, said, I worked in VR for years. I shipped launch titles for Oculus DK1, Vive, Touch, Gear VR, etc. I learned just one thing. Consumers wanted weirder, only in VR titles like Job Sim and Beat Saber. They did not want first-person shooters or social experiences they already had. This is...
Already had.
Right. There's a lot, and so it just brings up this question: is like, what are we looking for as gamers? I mean, do you think that VR can survive with games like Job Sim and Beat Saber, or do you think that those are like kind of novelties and those are fun things to use to get people into VR, but do they make the platform sustainable?
I mean, I think the quick answer is no. In the long run, could we do another generation of those kind of games? Maybe for another 3 years? I think yes, it could be done with the improvements, with all the. Because the thing is, this isn't just about improvements in the gaming; it's in the tech as well. There's been a lot of comments at the moment about, joking aside about the click turning, that there's a lot of people that can't do smooth turning because it makes them feel sick. And I'm really curious to see, and I think these first impressions of PSVR 2 is not going to give us an answer to this yet. But as these games start being released, I'd be curious to know if people that usually have motion sickness with certain movements, whether it's going fast when moving with full locomotion, or it's to do with smooth turning, I wonder if they'll find actually with the haptics and the headset and the optimization and peripheral vision with foveated rendering, that could actually fix a lot of those things. And so my point in the context of like these more gimmicky games, if we call them that, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. Sure. There could be a whole generation of improvements that just make these games. Yeah, we could just have them for 3 or 4 years. Just although saying that, I don't think that is the answer. I'm just saying I think they could get by, but that's not going to be sustainable in the long run. And to be a long-term successful platform, VR needs to be investing now, or yesterday, really. We've had 6 years now. These big AAA games need to start coming out.
Yeah. Shades of Grey Matter in the chat says, I don't think he's entirely wrong. A lot of people trying out VR want to experience things that are completely unique to them. I think that's interesting, right? Because if you look at sales charts, then I think Shades is correct. You look at sales charts and you bring up something like the September 2022 VR sales charts, or the PlayStation VR sales charts, and you'll see a lot of, here, I can probably just bring that up right here, can I? You'll see a lot of games that are very VR focused, VR centric games that are not on any other platform. And here, I can find this somewhere here. Just trying to.
And while you're looking at, Brian, just to quickly say on that point that when it comes to actually, you know what? I've lost my point. I'll come back.
This is great. We're really killing it.
Yeah.
Come on. Where is this? Here it is. All right. Here, let me bring up the sales chart and we can take a look. And this is last month, right? Here we go. PlayStation Store, September 2022. Let's interact with this and bring it down. And so we have PS5 games, PS4 games. Where are we looking? PSVR games. So we start at the bottom is Transformers Beyond Reality, which is definitely, it's a rail shooter, and it's a short-lived one at that. It's a smaller experience. Sniper Elite VR, it's a longer experience, but it's segmented in a way that a traditional Sniper Elite VR game wouldn't be. It's sort of designed for shorter place bands. So it in a weird way, it sort of falls into this category. Swordsman VR, NFL Pro Era, Rick and Morty Virtual Reality, Greed, Creed Rise to Glory. That was very unintentional, I promise you. Astrobot Rescue Mission, Super Hot VR, Job Sim, and Beat Saber. These are all almost all of them. And there will always be exceptions to the rule. On smaller experiences, a lot of them custom designed for VR, most of them custom designed for VR, in games that you can't play on the flat screen. Even games like Super Hot VR is a different game than the flat screen one. The flat screen one is a first-person shooter. You actually run around. This is a stationary thing. And so when we look at a list like this, Miles, where are the bigger games? It's not like we've got none of them. We certainly haven't gotten a lot of them. But where are the bigger ones? Like, why? You would think that every single person jumping into VR would say, oh, this is amazing. Skyrim VR is on PlayStation VR. Why is this not on the list? There are launch games here on this list. Job Sim, Super Hot. These are all super early games. Where the fuck? I mean,
I do think though it's not like an either or, and I'm not saying that that's what you're suggesting, but like the idea is that there are certain games that are great entry points like Beat Saber and Job Sim and all this sort of stuff. But then yes, you do want those AAA games to maintain those longer relationships. It kind of reminds me when it comes to like you do content marketing, you sort of have like the top of the funnel that you're trying to fill with new audiences. So you make content that has wide appeal, big reach, people share it, they're bite-sized and snackable and like junk food, and it's just like gives you a real rush. But then once they've had that, you can't just keep feeding them that. They want to start getting stuff of more substantive value. And that's when you'd have the more long-form games. I mean, look, Beat Saber is an interesting one because, it is one that's very easy to click into. But then we talk about how many hours we've played in that game. Whereas Job Sim, is a game that you would show new people. But there's not huge amounts of replayability because a lot of those mechanics are then actually in more long form games. So
Right.
I do think that we do need both. And so going back to your question of like, where are these AAA's games? A lot. The truth is we don't have a lot out at the moment. A lot of them were just flat screen games that went to VR. And it's not to say that we can't have hybrid games. That's what we want. But they weren't designed as hybrid games, were they? When it comes to Skyrim VR or No Man's Sky. So it'll be interesting to see a generation where there are games built with both of those things in mind.
Agreed. And just to clarify, and I know that this can be a kind of a triggering conversation or whatever, or it's easy to get kind of lost in the weeds on this. Nakazaki in the chat says, "What's wrong with short, very polished VR experiences?" We're kind of here to say nothing is wrong with them. In fact, we love them as far as like Job Sim, and I'm just blanking on great examples of this stuff. But most of the library, most of the PSVR 1 library, most of the Quest library, again with exceptions, are shorter, polished VR experiences, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I take issue with is when people start saying we don't want anything but that, and I think you find that here. I'm going to bring this up real quick. So in response to the last tweet we saw, Enemis, I believe his name is, says, "I agree with Scott. I got into VR because of weird stuff and the ability to play in virtual worlds. I can play PC games or console games on my PC or console. I like when VR is different and set apart from cookie cutter adaptations of existing games, but each have an audience." So this I find really interesting when people say I can play PC games or console games on my PC or console, because this just shows how different a lot of gamers are. Because every time I've sat down over the last 6 years to play any flat screen game on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, the only thought I have is, man, this would be so much better in VR. Constantly. Doesn't even matter what game it is. Like, I'm just like, I can just imagine how beautiful it would look, how much more immersive it would be, the different ways they could implement VRAF mechanics into those games. So what it comes down to this, what I'm confused about, Nakizaki in the chat, aren't the people who are like, yeah, no, these unique VR experiences are great. It's not that I'm confused about. It's the people who don't want anything but that. And that's what kind of is driving me crazy this week. Just seeing, and it makes me wonder why. Like what's the genesis of this? Like where does this thought process come from? Saying, oh no, this is all I want. It's like, is this for people who are just not as obsessed with VR as I am, or is this for people who, and I really hate saying this, but I do feel like some of it comes from this. There are Quest gamers out there who are like, well, I know that my headset's not capable of this, so I just don't. Nope, I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. It's a little bit. To me. Again, I think I see more of this than most people because of what I do for a living. There's some fanboyism out there, and people will defend their headset to the death, and even when it shouldn't be, right? Like I have major problems with Sony, but man, I do not hold back. I voice all my opinions about how much Sony can be really fucking sucky sometimes, and about my problems with PSVR 1 games and all sorts of things. So hopefully I'm not coming across as somebody who is fanboying about PSVR 1 and PSVR 2. I'm very hopeful, but I can't imagine this is going to go as smoothly as I want it to. So I just my question is like, why can't we have both? And like, why would anybody out there be like, well, no, we don't even want these?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. We do need both. And it's also that when it comes to AAA games, there's even sort of two routes. AAA games isn't just like one massive category, because the way I break it down is you've got the games where they're hybrid games, and then you've got AAA games that have been made exclusively for VR, which is great. But if you are going to build a huge audience on PSVR 2, and this is what Brian and I were speaking about just before we went on air when going through these notes, it's the idea that, if you're a hardcore Call of Duty player, you get every single game, you're bought into the franchise, that's all you play with your mates. Right. Okay, you're invested in a AAA title, Call of Duty, but there could be a really great PSVR 2 first person like title, like Call of Duty, same quality, but there's actually a connection with the IP. That's not going to be enough for them to jump across, even if it's an amazing game.
Yeah.
And so there's a real responsibility here that there are AAA games that we'd argue are already available on PSVR, but actually we now need the AAA flat screen IPs to now come on over. And I think that's going to be the real test of this generation.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we absolutely would have seen a way higher sales of the last few VR headsets and of AAA games if we'd gotten games like Call of Duty. Call of Duty absolutely would have brought a ton of AAA flat screen gamers over to VR and been like, oh my God, I can play Call of Duty in VR? That's insane. Like they absolutely would have gone for that. And that's the exact same thing I've been saying for years now about Sony's first party IPs. We're going to actually see right off the bat with Horizon Call of the Mountain what proper marketing and proper decision making when it comes to what games belong in VR will do for VR sales. There's a huge rabid fan base of The Last of Us. There's a huge rabid fan base for Horizon. I just saw somebody in the chat say Gran Turismo 7. These are all games that sell really, really well, that people are really excited to play the next iteration of. And if the next iteration happens to be playable in VR, then you're going to sell more headsets. And it's so hard for me to break from that train of thought and try to understand what other people are saying when they say, well, we don't want those games in VR. I think, but that's all I want. That's all I fucking want. Like, I mean, that's not all I want. I want these indie games too. I've been a lover of indie games since indie games were a thing, right? Since day one. Some of my favorite PS2 games were indie games. We're going all the way back to that. So I just don't see where this division comes from. And obviously over on Quest, I was, might have sounded really negative when I was talking about Quest, but Resident Evil 4 sold like fucking crazy. They just talked about it during the Oculus Connect event. It sold like crazy. So those guys over there, they do want this stuff. That's exactly what this is proving. Is that even though that game is a 20-year-old AAA game, and in a convert of or conversion of a flat screen game, that they do want this stuff, right? I'm completely lost, and I'm actually wondering now if maybe some of this is just outdated thinking, in that if
I was just about to say that it feels like that tweet's like come 6 years too late.
Yeah,
like that is the generation we're now leaving, and it's not to like say they're completely wrong. I think that what they said had a lot of truth to it, but it's kind of like, don't let that prevent, like, don't stop progress. Like, we need to give this a go. We need these games to come out, and then let's see what the market says. Because there will be some people that are like, I don't want these kind of games. But I think there's going to be a lot of people that are, and I do still believe, Brian, and I'm curious to hear about what you think about this. I still think that Sony, especially having just these reports that they're producing 2 million headsets, I think Sony, whether it's at the showcase, it's before launch, I think there's going to be a huge, traditionally flat screen AAA IP that is going to be getting a PSVR 2 launch that's going to blow us away, like the kind of like the Fortnite or the GTA Online or Call of Duty. I think they just need one of them. They just need one of them, to really excite people. And I think that's coming. What about you?
Yeah, I do. I think there's an ace up Sony's sleeve. I think there's a lot of stuff that they haven't talked about. The fact is it's so funny because Twitter is such a cesspool these days that when I go on, I see people who are like, well, Sony's obviously got nothing to show, and that's why they've shown nothing. And I'm like, the fact that they've shown nothing means they've got nothing to show. I think it's the fact that they haven't shown anything means they haven't revealed the stuff that they've got, right? I mean, like this, again, multi-billion-dollar corporations making a new peripheral, and really, I do think that if PSVR 2 doesn't succeed, Sony's going to be like, hey, we're done with VR for a fucking while, right? Just like they're done with the portable business for a while. The Vita didn't do the numbers they needed, and so it's time to move on. But they did a lot. They did a lot to push the Vita, and maybe gave up on it a little too early. But the fact that we're getting a second PSVR means that they believe in it, because if if PSP had sold PSVR 1 numbers, we wouldn't have gotten the Vita. The PlayStation VR 1 sold 6 million, which is just an absolute fucking failure when it comes down to a peripheral or a console or however you want to look at it, right? And so it just shows that Sony believes in it, and they funded games up until the very end. We wouldn't have gotten games like Song in the Smoke on PlayStation VR 1 if it wasn't for Sony. If we wouldn't have gotten games like Wanderer on PSVR 1 if it wasn't for Sony, right? These are games that Sony funded quietly without being like, hey, look at what we're doing for you guys over here. They funded this shit silently. And because they believe in it and they want it, and so that's the only reason we're getting PSVR 2. And so why would they be spending? It's great that they believe in it, but I don't know if they would have made a second one if they didn't believe they'd be able to bring it into the mainstream. And so
and to make a third of what they sold in total, like from the get go, 2 million. If we're saying it's 6 million,
right?
That's absolutely huge, and that's a very bold statement. And the other thing I was going to say about the way they presented PSVR 2 so far. And by the way, just as a quick side note, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, please do, guys. Thank you very much. I love all the game cats who keep talking about it in the chat. But Sony have not actually done a consumer-facing explanation of PSVR 2 yet, have they? They've literally just shown games. They've actually not said anything. They've done blog posts and that, but they've not actually talked about foveated rendering. It's been in the ads, but they've not talked about it, saying this is why it's going to improve next generation. There's been no road to PS5 that Mark Cerny did, but with the Tempest engine and all this sort of stuff, they haven't done that with PSVR 2. I don't believe.
We're not. No, they haven't. We're not there yet. Again, it seems like they are taking way too long because of how long our community has been waiting for PSVR 2. But to the rest of the general public, to the rest of the casual gamers or the mainstream gamers, it wouldn't even make sense to do it. And as soon as they do a big event, it's going to be. Let's just put it this way: they've got a lot of opportunities between now and launch to promote, and build the hype. And so, and I really do hope, as bored as I was with the Mark Cerny PS5 tech talk or tech breakdown, I want that for PSVR 2, because that would finally be something I'd be interested in watching.
Shades of Grey Matter said in the chat, Jim Ryan talked about this stuff at his CES talk, and that is true, but I'm talking about consumer facing. Like, Sony always does the stuff at these events. I'm talking about on their YouTube channel during a live stream saying, this is what it's going to be,
right. I think they've got something dedicated coming, rather than just being a small part of CES or a couple games at the beginning of a state of play. Again, this is big. This is big. So This is huge for Sony. It's not just huge for us. It's huge for Sony too. Like they're wasting a lot of money if they don't push this thing as hard as they can. And so and I actually think 2 million at launch is conservative. I really do. I think that's a conservative figure, because you've got 6 million people who bought PSVR 1 who've been patiently waiting for PSVR 2. You've got 15 million Quest 2 owners who are like, hey, this is cool, but where are the big games? You've got a lot of fucking VR gamers out there who are just waiting for the next big thing. And I think now that they've seen that the Quest Pro is not for gamers, right? There's a lot of confusion about that. And now that even Oculus has come out and been like, no, you guys hold off and wait for Quest 3. That's our next big gaming, consumer-friendly, consumer affordable headset. People are going to be looking for something more immediate, right? And so, I think PSVR 2 is the more immediate thing, and delivering the kind of games that people have been looking for years now, right? I don't know where I was going with this. This is a fucking long rant, Miles. The caffeine finally kicked in, and I was just going on a tear, and I had no direction.
No, you were going in a direction, and just to carry on from that, it's. The announcement that it is $1,500 this Pro, and there's a lot of gamers going, oh, so is it for gamers? That does two really good things for Sony. One, as you mentioned, it now creates a gap of, okay, well, for you gamers, this is what we've got for offer, while the Quest 3 is in development. But secondly, I kept on saying about Sony and what their pressure points are on pricing. Regardless of if it's a gaming headset or not, the fact it's $1,500, you know what? Sony can do PSVR 2 now for $499.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, so yeah, actually, I remember where I was going with this whole thing, and that's that the thing you brought up, 2 million headsets. Luckily, Sony said that that they don't foresee any issues manufacturing more to meet demand or whatever, and so I do think we're going to see that number rise after pre-orders open. I think 2 million people will pre-order this thing, hands down, no questions asked.
Yeah.
And they're going to want this to be on store shelves. They're going to want it to be. They don't want the same debacle that the PlayStation 5 had already given them for the last 2 years. Man, 2 years. That's not a good look when you're like, PS5 is completely impossible to get. Luckily, it's starting to be easier to get. They don't want to have this same issue. They want to sell every PSVR 2 that they can possibly sell as soon as possible, right? Because I think that's going to determine a lot of things for a lot of developers. It's going to determine what Sony's doing, but also what third parties are doing. If they see, PSVR 2 only sold 1 million out of the gate, maybe we're not going to focus on this hybrid version of our game, right? But if you see that, if you're a developer and you've got a flat screen game in the works, and you see that PSVR 2 is taking off and Sony's out there trying to help you, be like, hey, listen, we can help you get this thing onto PSVR 2, this game that you already spent millions of dollars developing, we can help you make this a hybrid game and get it into PSVR 2. I think a lot of those developers are more likely to get on board with that when they see the sales of PSVR 2 taking off and becoming a mainstream device, rather than this niche product that VR has been for 6 years. More than 6 years.
How long's the PS5 been out for now? Like coming up to 3 years?
No. I think we're coming up to 2 years.
2 years, yeah. I mean, 2 years is a long period for many gamers who have played on a friend's PSVR or seen them and wanted to get one, but they're like, oh, but there'll be one coming out, well, which we knew for the PlayStation 5. That's a massive window of curiosity. So I think, yeah, the influx of people that have just been waiting, haven't even got PSVR, and they were like, no, I'm just going to wait for the next one because I haven't experienced PSVR much yet,
right,
means I'm not really missing it. And so I think that's going to really add a lot of volume to the demand as well. So I'm with you. I think the 2 million will be taken up pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think we got a little bit off topic here, but I do want to kind of close out this whole conversation by just kind of reiterating something that we've been talking about for a couple of years now, and just saying that, like, really, when it comes to indie games, when it comes to AAA games, when it comes to hybrid games, like, these are all going to be important when it comes to PSVR 2, because you can't have you can't have a healthy ecosystem of games and developers and gamers if you don't have the broad spectrum of games that people require, that consumers are looking for. I think that indie games and kind of these built from the ground up quirky VR games are really, I think they're great for the medium. I think they push the industry forward. I think indies have always pushed the industry forward. They've always kind of brought new ideas to the table that developers who are playing it safe are always kind of like unwilling to try out. And then they say, oh, that game over there did it and it worked out really well. We should consider that for our next game and then integrate that in. Indies are always kind of pushing the hardware, or maybe not even the hardware, like not like in graphical sense, but they're pushing what we think of as traditional games, and always bring new things to the table. And we need that. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in the same kind of rut we've been in for a little while now, with just prettier looking games that play exactly like the old pretty games that we were playing. But then, of course, AAA games will sell headsets. Recognizable IPs will sell headsets. Hybrid games are a Trojan horse to get VR games into people's hands. They didn't even realize. Like, if you wake up one day and go, 10 of the games I bought this year are playable on PlayStation VR 2 at no additional charge, they're hybrid games. At that point, you're like, I have 10 games for this thing already. Wouldn't you consider, like, oh, maybe it's time to buy a headset? I already own 10 VR games.
Right.
So I just think it's confusing to me. It's confusing to me why anybody would be against broadening the ecosystem, broadening the available titles for a headset. And I think that's kind of the question I want to bring to this conversation. I didn't want to take a side because we all know my side. I'm like, I want amazing games. I want AAA hybrids. I want it all, right? But I also know how important AAA hybrids are. I wanted to come at this from more of an inquisitive standpoint and figure out why people are saying these things. And so I don't think I found my answer. So please, if you're watching this after the fact and you have any kind of answers why people wouldn't want AAA VR games or hybrid games, please leave a comment on the video, because I want to kind of expand this conversation a little bit and see if I can't find out what the mindset is here. Because we can talk about this all day, Miles, but you and I think we're on the same page. We want it all. So curious to see where other people are coming from. So please don't hesitate to do that.
Yeah, the conversation always happens after the live show. So if you're watching, and also if you're in the live chat, the chat moves very quickly. You can't type huge thoughts because it just goes into the ether. So sometimes, you'll get to the end of a live show and go, actually, these are my top 5 points. And yeah, put it in there, because we love reading them the next day and responding. So
absolutely,
please do.
And I've been for anyone paying close attention, obviously things on Without Parole have been moving very slowly recently. GAMESCAST is the only thing I feel like I've done for 2 weeks. Obviously you guys know, a lot of shit's been going down, in that some of that has been public and some of that has not been public. And I'm just trying to kind of sort of put life back together piece by piece and get back to the normal Without Parole schedule. So if anybody's been missing PSVR this week or breaking news reports or anything else, I do apologize. Reviews have been backburnered for a little bit. Over the next week, I'm going to be getting back to normalcy. And I do appreciate everybody who's been very patient and hanging out during the live streams, because that's all we've had, Miles. It's been fun. It's been fun to break up my pseudo vacation. I hate calling it a vacation, because vacation is supposed to be fun, and this has just been I feel like I've just been mentally repairing myself for
vacations. I mean, to be honest, here in Romania, I literally have nothing planned. People are like, what are you doing for your 5 days? I've literally come out here with nothing planned. I could literally stay in this apartment 5 days and it'll be fine, because it's just having a psychological reset. Sometimes you just need a vacation just to vacate whatever the fuck you were doing already. So we don't have to worry about what it is. A vacation means going to a hot beach somewhere. It can just be taking some time out to practice self-care, which is very important.
True that. Thank you. I do. I'm going to close out this poll. We got 212 votes on the poll. Thank you, everybody, for participating. 19% of you said you want AAA VRAF hybrids on PSVR 2. 7% said you just want indies and unique experiences. And of course, 74% of you said you want all of the above. Duh. Right. Nice and crispy in the chat says, depends what you think a hybrid game is. We've been defining hybrid game very specifically. We're the first and only channel to use it from firsthand knowledge. Hybrid games are meant to be games that feel like they were, even though they're flat screen games initially, playing them in VR is when they feel like they were built from the ground up for VR. They feel like games that were designed for VR. They've got VRAF interactions. That's what hybrid game means. So that's what we're looking for. All right, man. We have been on this topic. I'm going to end the poll. Thank you, everybody who voted. Let's end the show with a fun game. I'm not sure how much fun it's going to be, because here I am on the chopping block. With a fun game of 20 questions, PSVR 20 questions. Miles is going to be the host. We totally understand that we've screwed up the schedule somehow, that Miles has been the host a few times in a row here. But because we're trying to alternate every single episode, I think, let's see, I host, no. AJ hosted. Then what? I don't know how it goes. Miles.
We're back on track.
Do you think we're back on track?
I think so. Although I'm about to take us off track, because there was a comment from Braxbro when I was talking about being here. He says, Miles, there's an amusement park that's underneath a mountain in Transylvania. You should go there. How cool does that sound, Brian? That's very Halloweeny, isn't it?
It sounds very Halloweeny. I would absolutely do that if I were you.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. Good recommendation.
He says says it's real. Look it up. They only have 3 little kid rides, but he would go just to see it.
That's awesome.
Okay, cool. All right, man. Do you have your game picked out for PSVR 20 questions?
Yeah, I do.
Dude, I am shocked at despite the fact that we went way off topic and went way off the run of show, we are actually not 2 hours deep right now. It's pretty good.
No, that's good, man.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to put the clock up on the counter on the clock the way that somebody likes it. Jeremy, I think. Yeah. Who else? Go. Does this have move? No. Does this support? Can you play this game? 3 questions deep. Does it? Can you play this game with analog sticks?
No, and yes. I'm joking. It's yes.
Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So yes for analog. Does it have aim support?
No.
Okay. So that's
I'm using my laptop notepad for marking how many you've done.
okay. So we're gonna say Dual Shock analog. This is a horror game.
Yeah.
Whoa, we're in my wheelhouse. I'm trying to think. I don't know if a lot of horror games have. Can you also play with this with moves?
No.
Okay, so that takes care of it. It's DualShock only. DualShock only horror game. Is there a version of this on the flat screen?
Yep. 5. Is that 5? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the chat's already saying RE7. I can't think of anything else. Is this game part of a recognizable franchise?
No.
All right, you guys, not Resident Evil 7.
I wanted you just to go and guess it then, Brian.
All right. Is this studio currently a first-party studio?
Yes.
Is this game procedurally generated?
Yeah.
Does this game take place on a space station heading into a black hole?
You could say that, Brian. Yes, you could say that.
Is there any chance, my friend Miles Dyer, too wise for his own good, is this game The Persistence?
It is, Brian. It is. It is 2 weeks in a row. You've absolutely smashed these. At least it wasn't. What was it? Question 2. Did you mention it in today's show?
I mean,
yeah, it's The Persistence.
We didn't talk about The Persistence on today's show. So if I asked that,
we didn't. That's why I thought, oh, maybe you'll it will require a few more questions, and it did. Just a few more.
You intentionally didn't bring up The Persistence all day today, just in case I asked that question.
It. Right? Yeah. You got it at 9. It was really good. And I wasn't looking at the chat, but there was some that said, it's The Persistence as soon as Dan Kiefer, it's The Persistence, game over. But someone had mentioned Game Cat, Photo Nutter.
GC13 says, thank God I was here to help. Couldn't have done it without you, Tiff. Shades of Grey Matter reminds us that we did The Persistence on Backlog Club a week ago. Good stuff, man. Okay.
Nice.
Just a good reminder to come join Discord, because not only can you get in on the Backlog Club and play games that you might have forgotten about, but you can also join Professor Lilith and the crew for games every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. That is part of the multiplayer meetup. This week, Battlewake. 2 p.m. Eastern, you guys. All right, man. Dude, I am tired. I've got a headache. It's been a rough day. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us today. And Miles, you're in Romania, man. This is.
I got a headache, and I need sleep. Yeah. And sorry, guys, there's no clip of the week. I mean, I could do a clip now.
No.
Just reenact something.
Absolutely not. Nope. Thank you to everybody who helps the channel running, like Jamie Out and Sci-Fi GameCat, Henry, of course, all the moderators out there. We love you so very much. Everybody who supports on patreon.com/withoutprogames. Couldn't pay the bills without you. And even with you, sometimes not. But what are you going to do? And of course, everybody who hung out in the chat, help me with 20 questions. Support us by tipping, and all of you out there who sat back and watched the show. Miles, this is not going as well as it should. My brain is like skipping a beat every other. Everybody who sat back and watched the show and didn't say a goddamn word. We know you're out there, and we love you just as much. Miles, it's fucking Friday. Let's get out of here.
Friday.
Oh, there it is. Bye.
Bye.
Dude, can you hear my chair squeaking like throughout the entire show? This is.
I could hear it now. You mentioned it, so maybe that was what.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it reminds me. I've been playing with my band, we've been playing a lot of gaming lately, which has been playing a lot of Fortnite. And
Oh no.
Luke, the singer, he plays through the DualSense microphone,
Hmm.
and he also has the vibration on. So just every so often you just hear. And when I was testing my live stream on Twitch, I can't remember who it was. Someone was in the chat and going, "Miles, what's that noise?" And I was like, "What?" And then Hugh, the guitarist in the band, was like, "Oh no, that's Luke." And I realised it got to a point now that I've just managed to phase it out. But the DualSense controller for the microphone setup is terrible. Like I find if I plug in a headset into the notch at the bottom, sometimes it just cuts out and you don't even know, and you think everyone's ignoring you, and then you realise they've not heard you for the last half an hour.
All right. So here, I've got an actual serious question based on this, based on this conversation. So I've been playing Fortnite the last few days, Miles. First time ever. I've never played Fortnite until about 5 days ago, and I'm now level like 45. Like I've been playing nonstop.
Amazing.
Yeah, I got the emo cat. I'm very, very happy.
Meow skulls.
Yes, Meow Skulls. Yep, I got Meow Skulls, and I'm very, very happy about that. And so, my brother and his kids, they play Fortnite all the time as a family. And as soon as they found out that Uncle Brian plays fucking Fortnite, they were like, "You got to come play with us." And so I was playing with them, but we played it a different way. I used the little headset that I plugged into the DualShock or DualSense, and just did that instead of using Discord like we do here. And they kept saying, they're like, "Who's making this slurping sound? Is somebody eating or drinking or whatever?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I just joined you guys, and so the sound has to be coming from my end. You guys weren't hearing this before." And so, is any of the sound coming from the DualSense sound like a slurping sound?
I have no idea. I've heard people with loads of issues, and I'm wondering if it's just Jim Ryan with one of his ploys to get everyone to buy the Pulse 3D Pulse headphones.
It's obviously Jim Ryan. That's obviously what it is. But yeah, what a fucking disaster. I just felt self-conscious the whole time, being like, is this what's making the noise? If I do this, is that what's making the noise? And then I started thinking, well, is it actually coming from my own mouth? Like, is it and so I get super self-conscious playing with family, playing Fortnite. And of course, Dan Kiefer in the chat's like, "Brian, who are you? Where's Brian? Where was he abducted?" Yeah, dude, this is how boring VR has been lately. It's like I'm playing Fortnite.
Dude, we'll have to play Fortnite together soon. Then
for sure.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Dude, Fortnite's a blast. I definitely had some misconceptions about it, and playing it for myself made me realize what a great game it is. And fuck build mode. Yep.
I do enjoy building, but I enjoy no build. Zero build's amazing, and it's brought in so many players. And as we've mentioned again, it lays the foundations for a VR component.
Yo, absolutely, and I completely understand why there was a resurgence in players when no build mode became a thing, because it's just way more fun. Just real quick before we get out of here, Dark Angel 3 with the 650 said, "I want to believe that Sony's going to serve up a buffet of goodies to satisfy many palates." And then another $2 tip for the caboose of the tip train. Thank you, Dark Angel. We are right there with you. We hope Sony has a lot up their sleeve, and we cannot wait to see what they've got for us so I can finally stop playing fucking Fortnite. If Fortnite VR comes out, that's another story altogether. The addiction will continue. It's a great game. All right, man. Listen, get out of here. Go to sleep, and keep us updated on your vacation, man. Can't wait to see what you do.
Awesome. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.